Now we want to conclude by bringing together the concepts of rationality, relativity, and objectivity. And we're going to talk about the he's a thief case, which is going to help us draw out some conclusions. Now you're on a jury hearing the case of he's a thief who's accused of robbing a bank. The evidence presented against thief isn't very convincing. One witness tentatively identified him as the robber, but admits under cross-examination that he didn't get a very good look at the robber. Other seemingly honest witnesses report that thief was with them at the time of the robbery, thus providing him with an alibi. No fingerprints, suspicious financial dealings, or past record is brought up to indicate his guilt. In fact, however, thief is guilty. His witnesses were paid off to support his alibi, and the police have done a bad job investigating the case. Okay, so here's the situation. Let's just summarize it. You're on the jury, and they've presented really, really bad evidence for the proposition that he's a thief, has committed the crime, has committed the bank robbery. However, unbeknownst to all you guys, you don't know anything about it, thief did commit the bank robbery. And he paid off the witnesses, and the police are totally incompetent. So let's figure out what is reasonable to believe in this case. Well, consider the proposition, he's a thief, robbed the bank. Is it rational for you, remember you're a member of the jury, to believe, 25, to believe he's a thief, robbed the bank? No. Look into the evidence you have. Remember, you have to have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. You have poor evidence. You don't have anything that ties him to the scene. All of the evidence the prosecution has given you is crummy evidence. Shouldn't lead you to believe that, as opposed to believing that he didn't rob the bank. So at best, you should be suspending judgment based on the evidence you have. Now, ask yourself a different question. Is it rational for Heza to believe that he's a thief, robbed a bank? Well, Heza was there. He did it. He paid off the witnesses. It seems it is rational for him to believe that he robbed the bank, but not rational for members of the jury to believe that he robbed the bank. Interesting. Now, is it true? Well, the way we set up the example, it definitely is true. Notice we end up with some interesting and maybe surprising set of conclusions. That is, one and the same proposition is rational for Heza to believe, but you as a member of the jury, it's not rational to believe, and it happens to be true. So even though it is true, it is not rational for you to believe, but remember, that shouldn't be a problem because of fallibilism. So let's summarize where we are. Rationality is relative. Remember when we started, I said there was a misconception that people think truth is relative. I don't think truth is relative. It's absolute, as you'll see I'm going to say in a second. But rationality is relative to the evidence that the person has. What is rational for one to believe at any given time is relative to the evidence one possesses. So in the he's a thief case, the members of the jury possess a different set of evidence than he's a thief possesses. That's why it's not rational for them to believe that he's guilty, but it is rational for Heza to believe that he committed the crime. But remember, truth is objective. It doesn't depend on evidence. What's true depends on how the world actually is, regardless of what anyone or everyone believes, and regardless of the evidence that people possess or people lack. And remember, reasonable belief is fallible. Rationality is fallible, depending on one's evidence. It can be the case that it's rational for you to believe a false proposition and irrational for you to believe a true proposition, which is why I was advocating the fallibilist view that even though it's rational for you to believe something and for you to believe, remember when you believe it, you're believing that it is true. Nonetheless, you shouldn't take the position that you're infallible, that your rational belief can never be false. So I think with this, it's a nice way to wrap up our discussion of truth, belief, rationality, and its relationship to evidence. Now, armed with these concepts, we're going to be able to take a look at arguments and decide what makes arguments good arguments and what makes arguments bad arguments, because good arguments, we're going to hope, are going to lead us to rational beliefs. Bad arguments are ones that if we follow, we will end up with irrational beliefs.